Imagine being denied a loan just because someone didn't believe in you. That's exactly what happened to a woman who walked into a bank with big dreams, only to be humiliated by the manager. But in just 5 minutes, she didn't just prove them wrong. She bought the entire bank. What she uncovered along the way will leave you stunned. Before we start the story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. The morning light streamed through the glass doors of the bustling bank, highlighting the polished floors and the hum of activity. People moved in and out, clutching papers and exchanging polite nods with the tellers behind their counters. Sophia James stepped into the building, her heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. She held a thick folder in her hand, filled with the culmination of months of hard work. Dressed in a sharp blazer and with a determined look in her eyes, she wasn't just another customer. She had come here with a purpose, one she believed was straightforward, to secure a business loan that would take her community-focused startup to the next level. Sophia approached the front desk, where a receptionist greeted her with a professional but distant smile. "Good morning," Sophia said, her voice steady and polite. "I have an appointment with Mr. Grayson." The receptionist nodded, made a quick phone call and motioned for Sophia to head to the manager's office. As she walked across the lobby, she felt a few eyes on her. She was used to it. Being one of the few black women who navigated the world of finance and entrepreneurship often came with stares that lingered a bit too long. But Sophia kept her head high. She reminded herself why she was there: to grow her business, to prove her critics wrong, and to pave the way for others like her. Mr. Richard Grayson, the bank manager, sat behind a large mahogany desk. He looked up as Sophia entered, offering a handshake that felt perfunctory rather than warm. "Ms. James, welcome. Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His tone was polite, but there was an unmistakable air of dismissal in the way he barely looked at her as he adjusted his glasses. Sophia introduced herself and began to explain her business. She spoke with passion about her company's mission: to bring sustainable, affordable housing to underprivileged communities. She detailed her plans, pointing to the graphs and projections in her folder. Her voice was filled with hope, her ideas well-researched and thorough. This wasn't just a dream, it was a viable business with proven results. But as she spoke, Mr. Grayson leaned back in his chair, his expression indifferent. He interrupted her mid-sentence, holding up a hand as if to stop her from wasting more of his time. "Ms. James," he said, cutting her off, "I'm going to stop you right there. This venture of yours doesn't quite align with the kind of investments we support." Sophia paused, taken aback. She frowned slightly but kept her composure. "I'm not sure I understand," she said. "The numbers are solid, and my revenue projections show steady growth. I've already secured partnerships with local developers." Mr. Grayson shook his head, a condescending smile spreading across his face. "It's not about the numbers, Ms. James. We have certain criteria, and frankly, this kind of project carries a lot of risks. We have to be cautious about who we lend to." His words lingered, heavy with implications. Sophia's jaw tightened. She knew what he wasn't saying aloud. She had seen this attitude before: the polite dismissal, the vague reasoning that covered up something far less professional. For a moment, she considered pressing him, asking him to explain exactly what he meant by this kind of project and who we lend to. But she stopped herself. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and said, "Thank you for your time, Mr. Grayson." Without another word, she gathered her folder and stood. As she turned to leave, she noticed the faint smirk on his face, a look that said he had already forgotten about her. But what he didn't realize was that Sophia wasn't walking away defeated. She was walking away with a plan. Sophia exited the manager's office, her expression calm, but her mind was already working. The sting of rejection was familiar, but it no longer held the power to shake her resolve. She walked past the rows of desks, her heels clicking steadily, ignoring the curious glances of the bank employees. By the time she stepped out into the crisp air outside, her phone was already in her hand. She dialed a number and waited. A deep, assured voice answered after the first ring. "Sophia," the voice greeted. "I wasn't expecting your call so soon." "I'm ready," she replied without hesitation. Her voice was firm but controlled, with no hint of the frustration she had just faced. "Grayson denied the loan, just as we anticipated. Let's move forward with the acquisition." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, followed by a chuckle. "I'll make the arrangements," the voice said. "You're sure you don't want to give him a heads up?" Sophia allowed herself a small smile, though her tone remained measured. "He doesn't deserve one. Let's make it official." She ended the call and tucked her phone back into her bag. Looking up at the grand facade of the bank, she let the weight of the moment settle over her. This wasn't just about a loan. It wasn't even about the business anymore. It was about standing up to people who underestimated her, who thought they could dismiss her without consequence. Sophia turned and headed back inside the building, her head held high. This time, the receptionist didn't greet her with the same indifference. There was a flicker of confusion in her eyes as Sophia walked confidently past the desk without waiting for permission. The receptionist started to protest but faltered when Sophia shot her a look that was both calm and commanding. She headed straight for the regional director's office, her steps unwavering. It was time for the tables to turn. The regional director's office was tucked away in a quiet corner of the bank, its glass walls offering a view of the bustling lobby below. Sophia knocked once and entered without waiting for an invitation, her movements deliberate and poised. Inside, a man in his late 40s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, looked up from his desk. His nameplate read, "Jonathan Carter, Regional Director." "Ms. James," he said, standing as she entered. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" His voice was polite but tinged with curiosity. It wasn't every day someone bypassed appointments and walked in unannounced. Sophia placed her folder on his desk and met his gaze directly. "I believe you've been briefed about my ongoing negotiations with your parent company," she said. Her tone was firm but professional, leaving no room for doubt. Carter's brows furrowed as he opened the folder and scanned its contents. A moment later, realization dawned. "Ah, yes," he said, his expression shifting to one of guarded respect. "The acquisition proposal. I hadn't realized this was your project." Sophia's lips curved into a subtle smile. "It is," she confirmed, "and as of this morning the final terms were approved. Effective immediately, I am the majority shareholder in this bank." Carter blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. He had expected to deal with a faceless investor or a corporate representative, not a poised woman who had just been in his lobby minutes ago. "Well," he said, regaining his composure, "congratulations. That's certainly unexpected." Sophia didn't sit down, keeping the upper hand by standing while he remained seated. "Thank you," she said. "There's one immediate matter I'd like to address." She folded her arms, her voice steady. "Your branch manager, Richard Grayson." Carter's eyes flicked up, a hint of caution in his gaze. "What about him?" Sophia leaned slightly forward, her confidence unshaken. "I just had a meeting with him regarding a loan for my business. He dismissed me outright, not because my proposal lacked merit, but because he decided I wasn't worth his time. That kind of attitude has no place in a bank I now control." Carter's face tightened as he processed her words. "I see," he said carefully. "I'll look into the matter immediately." Sophia tilted her head slightly, her gaze unrelenting. "I expect his resignation on my desk by the end of the day," she said. "I trust that won't be a problem." Carter nodded slowly, his respect for her growing with each passing second. "Consider it handled," he said. Satisfied, Sophia extended her hand. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I look forward to working with you." He shook her hand, his grip firm but his demeanor unmistakably deferential. As Sophia exited the office, her posture was as steady as when she'd entered. The power dynamics in the building had shifted entirely, though most of the staff below still had no idea what was coming. With every step back toward the lobby, Sophia felt the weight of justice settling into place. This was only the beginning. Sophia walked back into the lobby with an air of calm authority, her eyes scanning the familiar layout with fresh perspective. The same tellers who had given her half-curious, half-dismissive glances earlier now seemed unsure of how to respond to her confident stride. She caught sight of Richard Grayson through the glass wall of his office. He was seated at his desk, casually flipping through paperwork, completely unaware of the storm heading his way. She paused in the center of the lobby, her presence commanding attention. A junior banker who had been observing her earlier hesitated before stepping forward. "Excuse me, Ms. James," he said nervously. "Can I help you with something?" Sophia gave him a measured smile. "Not at the moment, thank you. I believe you'll know soon enough," she replied, her tone polite, but with an edge that left the young man puzzled. Without breaking stride, she headed for the front desk, where the receptionist from earlier sat frozen, her mouth slightly open. "Would you be so kind as to call Mr. Grayson and let him know I'll be returning to his office in a moment?" Sophia said. The receptionist, now unsure of her footing, nodded hastily and picked up the phone. Sophia didn't wait for a response. She moved toward a quieter corner of the lobby and pulled out her phone again, dialing her investor contact. "The regional director is on board," she said smoothly, her voice low but firm. "Grayson will be dealt with shortly. Let's proceed with the employee announcement as soon as possible." As she ended the call, Sophia allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. Everything was moving quickly, exactly as planned. She had worked tirelessly to ensure that every contingency was covered. She hadn't expected Grayson's rejection to sting as much as it did, but that was a minor inconvenience compared to the satisfaction she felt now. Her thoughts were interrupted by a nervous clearing of the throat. She looked up to see the receptionist standing a few feet away. "Mr. Grayson will see you now," she said, her voice faltering. Sophia smiled and thanked her, walking with measured confidence back toward the office she had left not long ago. This time, her posture wasn't just confident, it was unshakable. She opened the door without knocking, stepping inside before Grayson had a chance to react. "Ms. James," he said, his tone laced with thinly veiled annoyance. "Back so soon. I thought our discussion was finished." Sophia closed the door behind her and placed her bag on the chair she had sat in earlier. She took a moment, letting the silence settle in the room before speaking. "It seems there's been a change in circumstances," she said calmly, her eyes locking on his. "One that directly affects you." Grayson frowned, his dismissive demeanor faltering slightly. "What are you talking about?" he asked, leaning forward in his chair. Sophia's expression remained steady, her voice unyielding. "Mr. Grayson, I'm here to inform you that, as of this morning, I am the new majority shareholder in this bank. That means I'm now your employer." Grayson's face froze, the blood draining from his cheeks. For the first time since their initial meeting, he seemed truly at a loss for words. "That's impossible," he stammered, his voice barely audible. "It's not," Sophia said sharply. "And you'll find that out soon enough. But for now, you'll need to prepare your resignation. It's already been made clear to the regional director, and I expect your cooperation in making this transition as smooth as possible." Grayson's mouth opened, but no words came out. Sophia didn't wait for him to recover. She stood, collected her bag, and headed for the door. Pausing briefly, she looked back at him and said, "You underestimated the wrong person, Mr. Grayson. That's a mistake you won't make again." With that, she walked out, leaving the once smug manager sitting in stunned silence. As Sophia walked out of Grayson's office, she noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere of the bank. Employees were beginning to sense that something significant was unfolding. Conversations in hushed tones replaced the usual buzz of business as Sophia made her way toward the center of the lobby. The receptionist avoided eye contact, her earlier aloofness now replaced by a visible nervousness. The regional director appeared moments later, stepping out of the elevator and striding toward her with purpose. "Ms. James," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "I've gathered the staff as you requested. They're waiting in the conference room." Sophia nodded, her calm demeanor never wavering. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she replied. "Let's not keep them waiting." She followed him down a short hallway to the conference room. Inside, about 24 employees were seated around a large table, their faces a mix of confusion and curiosity. Among them was the junior banker who had approached her earlier, sitting stiffly with his hands folded in front of him. Grayson, however, was conspicuously absent. Sophia entered the room and stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding immediate attention. Carter remained by the door, watching silently as she addressed the group. "Good afternoon," she began, her tone steady but authoritative. "I'm Sophia James, and as of this morning, I am the new majority shareholder of this institution." A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. The employees exchanged startled glances, their surprise evident. Sophia allowed them a moment before continuing. "I understand this is unexpected, but I want to assure you that my focus is on the growth and success of this bank. However," she paused, her gaze sweeping across the room, "success starts with respect and accountability, and that applies to everyone at every level." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The junior banker's eyes flickered with something that looked like relief, while others sat up straighter, their attention now fully on her. "I'll be reviewing the practices and policies of this branch closely," Sophia continued. "And there will be changes, necessary changes to ensure this is a place where fairness and professionalism are upheld at all times." She glanced toward Carter, who gave a subtle nod of agreement. Before anyone could ask questions, the door opened, and Grayson stepped in. His face was flushed, and his usual smugness had been replaced by a strained attempt at composure. Sophia turned to him, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "Mr. Grayson," she said, addressing him in front of the entire room, "I was just explaining that changes are underway, and your role in this organization has been reevaluated." Grayson froze in the doorway, his jaw tightening. "I see," he managed, his voice barely masking his frustration. Sophia gestured toward the empty chair at the far end of the table. "Please, take a seat," she said. "There's much to discuss, and I wouldn't want you to miss the opportunity to reflect on today's events." The tension in the room was palpable, and Grayson hesitated, clearly aware that the power dynamic had shifted completely. He finally sat down, his movements slow and deliberate, but his gaze never met Sophia's. Sophia's calm voice filled the room again. "This isn't just about a loan or a single decision," she said, addressing the group, but making sure Grayson felt the weight of her words. "This is about creating an environment where every person, whether they're a client or an employee, is treated with the dignity they deserve." Her eyes lingered on Grayson for a moment longer before she turned her attention back to the staff. "Together, we will build something better, and it starts today." The room was silent, every person sitting a little straighter, fully aware they were witnessing the beginning of a new chapter for the bank, and for themselves. As the tension in the room began to settle, Sophia allowed a brief silence to stretch, giving the employees time to process her words. Grayson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his discomfort palpable. Sophia turned her gaze directly toward him, her expression unwavering. "Mr. Grayson," she began, her tone calm but resolute, "I'm sure you're aware that leadership sets the tone for an organization. Unfortunately, the tone you've set is not one that aligns with the vision or values I intend to bring to this bank." Grayson opened his mouth as if to respond, but Sophia raised a hand, silencing him before he could utter a word. "I've already discussed this matter with Mr. Carter, and it has been decided that your resignation is the most appropriate course of action, effective immediately." The room fell completely silent. The employees looked at each other with wide eyes, and a few glanced toward Grayson, whose face had gone pale. For a moment he seemed at a loss, his lips moving soundlessly. Finally he stammered, "This is highly irregular." Sophia tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady. "What's highly irregular, Mr. Grayson, is dismissing a client without giving their proposal due consideration. What's highly irregular is fostering an environment where bias outweighs merit. This is not a decision I made lightly, but it is a necessary one." Grayson stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You can't," he started. But Sophia interrupted him, her voice firm but still calm. "Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be," she said. "Your severance package will reflect the years you've spent with the bank, but your time here has come to an end. Security will escort you out once you've gathered your belongings." Grayson glared at her, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. The employees sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. After a moment, Grayson turned sharply on his heel and strode out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Sophia remained standing, her composure intact despite the tension that hung in the air. She addressed the employees again, her tone softening but still authoritative. "I understand this may feel sudden, but I want to assure you all that my goal is to create an environment where everyone is treated fairly and given the opportunity to succeed. If you have questions, my door is always open." The junior banker raised his hand hesitantly. "Ms. James," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "does this mean we'll be making changes to how clients are evaluated as well?" Sophia smiled at him, a genuine warmth in her expression. "Yes," she said. "From this moment forward, decisions will be based on merit, potential, and opportunity, not preconceived notions or personal biases." The room seemed to breathe collectively, a subtle tension lifting. For the first time, the employees saw not just a new owner, but a leader who might actually care about making things better. Sophia gathered her folder and glanced around the room one last time. "This is only the beginning," she said. "We're going to build something extraordinary together." With that, she turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving a room full of inspired and slightly stunned employees in her wake. As Sophia left the conference room, the air seemed lighter, but she knew the real work was just beginning. She made her way back to the lobby, where a few employees tried to avoid looking directly at her, still adjusting to the sudden shift in leadership. Her steps were measured, her confidence unshaken, but her mind was already running through the next steps. This wasn't just about removing Grayson. It was about reshaping the entire culture of the bank. The receptionist, now visibly nervous, rose from her seat as Sophia approached. "Ms. James," she stammered. "Is there anything you need?" Sophia offered her a small smile, a gesture of reassurance. "Thank you," she said calmly. "I'm fine for now. Please make sure Mr. Grayson's departure is handled respectfully, and let Mr. Carter know I'll need a detailed report of current operations by the end of the week." The receptionist nodded quickly, her face flushed, and sat back down. Sophia continued toward the elevator, her focus narrowing as she stepped inside and pressed the button for the top floor. This wasn't just any branch. This was the flagship location, and every move she made here would ripple across the rest of the organization. When the elevator doors opened, Sophia stepped into her new office. The room was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. It was clear that Grayson had spared no expense in making the office a reflection of his self-perceived importance. A heavy oak desk stood in the center, adorned with expensive trinkets and personalized stationery. Sophia moved to the desk and ran her fingers across its polished surface. She pulled out her phone and dialed another number, her mind already strategizing. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Sophia," the voice said, this time tinged with excitement. "How did it go?" "Grayson's gone," she said simply, her tone steady. "Carter's on board and the staff is aware of the transition. Now we focus on restructuring." The voice on the other end let out a low whistle. "You work fast." "We don't have time to waste," Sophia replied. "I need you to send over the finalized contracts for the new hiring policy. We're building a team that reflects the communities we serve, no exceptions." "Already in motion," the voice said. "Anything else?" Sophia glanced around the room, her gaze falling on a photo of Grayson shaking hands with a city official. She reached over and turned it face down. "Yes," she said. "Make sure the media package is ready. By the end of the week, I want every client and stakeholder to know exactly what we stand for and what we won't tolerate." As she ended the call, Sophia leaned back in the leather chair that now belonged to her. The office was quiet, but it wasn't silence that filled the space. It was possibility. Grayson's absence was only the first step. Now it was time to rewrite the rules, not just for the bank, but for everyone who had ever walked into a place like this and been told they weren't enough. Sophia looked out the window, her reflection superimposed against the sprawling cityscape. She had been dismissed, doubted, and underestimated. But now, she was the one setting the terms. And for the first time, she allowed herself a brief smile, knowing this was only the beginning. The next morning, Sophia arrived early at the bank, her heels clicking purposefully against the pavement as she approached the entrance. This time, there were no lingering stares of curiosity, just hushed whispers and sidelong glances as the staff began to understand the gravity of what had happened. Sophia noticed the receptionist stiffen slightly as she walked past, but Sophia offered her a warm nod, signaling that the upheaval of the previous day wasn't personal. The first task on her agenda was the staff meeting she had scheduled. By now, word had likely spread across the branch and the employees were eager, if not nervous, to see what changes their new leader would implement. Sophia entered the same conference room as the day before, her confident demeanor putting everyone on alert. The room filled quickly, chairs scraping against the polished floor as employees shuffled in. Carter entered last, his expression calm but watchful, as he took a seat near the front. The junior banker from before sat a little straighter this time, a spark of interest replacing his earlier nervousness. Grayson's absence was conspicuous, and the room felt lighter without his imposing presence. Sophia stood at the head of the table, holding a slim notebook in her hands. She waited until the room had settled before speaking. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I know the past 24 hours have been a whirlwind, and I appreciate your patience as we transition into this new chapter." She let her eyes sweep across the room, ensuring she had everyone's attention. "Before we move forward, I want to be transparent about why I'm here. I didn't acquire this bank to simply maintain the status quo. I acquired it to build something better, something that represents fairness, integrity, and opportunity." The employees exchanged cautious glances, unsure of what to expect next. Sophia leaned slightly forward, her voice softening. "I know some of you may be worried about what these changes mean for your roles. Let me assure you, this isn't about cutting jobs or reducing opportunities. It's about creating an environment where everyone, employees and clients alike, feels valued and supported." A hand shot up near the back of the room. It was an older employee, a senior loan officer who had been with the bank for decades. "Ms. James," he began, his tone respectful but hesitant. "What kind of changes are you talking about specifically? Are we looking at new policies or a complete overhaul?" Sophia nodded, appreciating the direct question. "Both," she said simply. "We'll be revising our client evaluation criteria to eliminate any unconscious biases that may have crept into the decision-making process. Additionally, I'll be implementing new training programs to ensure every employee has the tools they need to succeed." The murmurs returned, this time tinged with cautious optimism. The junior banker raised his hand next. "Will we be addressing how loans are approved?" he asked, his voice more confident now. "Because, honestly, some of the processes we've been following seem outdated." Sophia's lips curled into a small smile. "Exactly," she said. "The approval process will be streamlined and revised to focus on potential and innovation, not just rigid formulas. We'll also be introducing more community outreach programs to support underrepresented entrepreneurs." The energy in the room began to shift. Some employees looked thoughtful, others nodded in agreement. Even Carter, who had initially appeared skeptical of Sophia's sweeping vision, seemed to relax slightly, his arms uncrossing as he leaned forward to listen more intently. As the meeting wrapped up, Sophia delivered her final message. "This is a chance for all of us to be part of something transformative. Change can be challenging, but it also brings opportunity. I hope you'll join me in making this branch the standard for what a modern bank should look like." The room erupted into light applause, a sound that surprised even Sophia. She smiled and thanked them, then stepped aside as the staff began to file out. Carter lingered near the door, waiting until the others had left before approaching her. "You have their attention," he said, his tone carrying a hint of admiration. "That's no small feat after what they've been through." Sophia turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "It's not about having their attention," she said quietly. "It's about earning their trust, and that's what we'll do. Together." Carter nodded, a flicker of respect passing across his face. "Let me know how I can help," he said. Sophia gave him a firm handshake. "You already are." As she stepped back into her new office, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. There were mountains yet to climb, but for the first time she saw the path ahead clearly. Change wasn't coming. It had already arrived. Later that afternoon, Sophia sat at her desk, reviewing the reports Carter had provided on the bank's current operations. The numbers were strong, but there were glaring patterns that stood out to her. Certain demographics repeatedly overlooked for loans, a sharp decline in small business applications, and an over-reliance on high-risk corporate ventures. These weren't just inefficiencies. They were symptoms of a system that needed to be rethought from the ground up. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. She looked up to see the junior banker from the conference room standing hesitantly in the doorway. "Ms. James, do you have a moment?" he asked, his voice careful but determined. "Of course," Sophia said, gesturing for him to come in. "And call me Sophia. What's on your mind?" He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. "I just wanted to say thank you," he began, his words spilling out quickly as if he'd been rehearsing them. "For what you said earlier. It's the first time I've felt like someone's actually listening to people like me." Sophia set her pen down and leaned forward slightly. "People like you?" she prompted gently. He nodded, his cheeks flushing slightly. "Newer employees, younger staff, people who don't have decades of experience or connections. I've been here for 2 years and it's been frustrating. A lot of my ideas don't even make it past the first layer of management. And sometimes the way clients are treated," he trailed off, shaking his head. "It doesn't sit right with me." Sophia listened intently, letting his words sink in. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the issue feel even more urgent. "What's your name?" she asked. "Michael," he replied. "Michael Harper." "Well, Michael, I appreciate you coming to me with this," Sophia said. "You're right. People like you are the future of this bank, and your voice matters. If you're willing, I'd like you to be part of a team I'm assembling to review and propose changes to our internal processes." Michael blinked in surprise. "Me? Really? I mean, I don't have much seniority." "Seniority doesn't equal insight," Sophia interrupted, her tone firm but kind. "I need people who aren't afraid to speak up, who see the problems clearly because they're living them. Are you in?" Michael's hesitation melted into a tentative but genuine smile. "I'm in," he said, his voice carrying a note of newfound confidence. "Good," Sophia said. "We'll meet next week to start planning. In the meantime, if you notice anything else that doesn't sit right with you, let me know." Michael nodded and left the office, his steps lighter than when he'd entered. As the door clicked shut behind him, Sophia leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. Building trust wasn't just about addressing big, sweeping issues. It was about empowering individuals like Michael to believe they could make a difference. She glanced at the stack of reports on her desk, her focus sharpening once again. Change wasn't just about identifying what was broken. It was about finding the people who could help fix it. And now, she had her first ally. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Sophia immersed herself in the inner workings of the bank, meeting with department heads, reviewing outdated policies, and holding one-on-one conversations with employees. Each meeting revealed more of the systemic problems that had been allowed to fester under the previous leadership. Rigid loan criteria that stifled innovation, a lack of diversity in hiring practices, and a growing disconnect between the bank and the communities it was meant to serve. One morning, As Sophia was sifting through another pile of reports, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Carter, flagged as urgent. She opened it and found a detailed summary of complaints lodged against Grayson over the past 5 years, most of which had been ignored or quietly dismissed. Among them were several accusations of discriminatory behavior from both employees and clients. Sophia's jaw tightened as she read through them, each line adding fuel to her resolve. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Carter stepped inside carrying a folder. "I thought you'd want to see this in person," he said, placing it on her desk. Sophia opened the folder and found more documentation, emails, memos, and meeting notes that painted an even clearer picture of Grayson's pattern of misconduct. "How did this go unchecked for so long?" she asked, her voice calm but with an edge of frustration. Carter sighed, sitting down across from her. Grayson was untouchable for a while. He had connections higher up and no one wanted to rock the boat. Complaints were either buried or dismissed outright. It wasn't right, but people felt powerless to challenge him. "Well," Sophia said firmly, closing the folder, "that ends now. I want a formal statement drafted acknowledging the bank's past failures to address these issues, along with an outline of the corrective actions we'll be taking moving forward. This isn't just about Grayson. It's about making it clear that this kind of behavior has no place here." Carter nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll get it done. And for what it's worth, I think people are already starting to feel the shift. The staff meetings, the changes you're proposing, they're making a difference." Sophia leaned back slightly, her mind racing ahead. "We need to go further. I want to launch a community initiative, a program to reach out to underrepresented entrepreneurs and provide them with the resources they need to succeed. Workshops, mentorship programs, networking events. If the bank is going to thrive, we need to reconnect with the people we're here to serve." Carter's brow lifted slightly, a spark of approval in his eyes. "That's ambitious," he said. "But if anyone can pull it off, it's you." Sophia smiled faintly. "Ambition is what brought me here," she said, "and it's what will take us where we need to go." As Carter left to begin drafting the statement, Sophia turned back to the reports on her desk. The weight of the work ahead was heavy, but it didn't intimidate her. If anything, it fueled her determination. She had come into this bank as an outsider, someone dismissed and underestimated. Now she was reshaping it from within, piece by piece, building something that would stand as a testament to what was possible when you refused to back down. And this was only the beginning. By the end of the week, Sophia's presence had transformed the bank into a hive of activity. Employees were talking about the changes, some cautiously optimistic, others still wary. Word of her vision for the community outreach program spread quickly, and to Sophia's surprise, several staff members came forward with ideas for workshops and partnerships. One idea in particular caught her attention: a pitch from Michael to collaborate with local schools on financial literacy programs. The idea came up during an informal meeting Sophia had called in the break room. It was an open forum, with employees invited to share their thoughts in a relaxed setting. Michael, still adjusting to his new role on the internal review team, spoke hesitantly at first but gained confidence as he explained his plan. "We could start with workshops for high school seniors," he said. "Teach them about budgeting, saving, and the basics of credit. A lot of kids in underserved areas don't get that kind of education, and it leaves them vulnerable later on." Sophia leaned forward, intrigued. "And how would we connect that to the bank's mission?" she asked, encouraging him to expand on the idea. Michael hesitated for a moment before replying. "We could offer scholarships tied to the program," he said. "Maybe even internships for students who show promise. It would be a way to invest in the community while also building relationships with future clients." The room buzzed with quiet approval, and Sophia nodded, impressed. "I like it," she said. "Let's put together a proposal and figure out how we can make it happen." The conversation sparked a wave of other ideas, and for the first time, the atmosphere in the bank felt energized. Employees who had previously kept their heads down now seemed eager to contribute, their voices growing louder and more confident as Sophia encouraged them to speak up. She could feel the momentum building, the shift from compliance to engagement. But not everyone was on board. That afternoon, as Sophia returned to her office, she found a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was scrawled and hurried, but the message was clear. Stick to your loans and leave the rest alone. Don't ruin what works. Sophia stared at the note, her mind racing. She knew that implementing change would ruffle feathers, but this felt different, more personal. Someone within the bank was resisting her leadership, and they weren't afraid to make their displeasure known. She tucked the note into a drawer and sat down at her desk, her jaw tightening. There was no way she was backing down now. If anything, the message only strengthened her resolve. Whoever had written it didn't understand who they were dealing with. Sophia picked up the phone and called Carter. When he answered, she wasted no time. "I need a full audit of department-level operations," she said, her voice firm. "Focus on expense reports, client records, and interdepartmental communications. I want to know exactly where every penny and every policy stands." Carter paused, sensing the urgency in her tone. "Do you suspect something?" he asked. "I don't suspect," Sophia replied. "I know. Something doesn't add up here, and I need answers." As she hung up, Sophia stared out the window, her reflection staring back at her. Change was never easy, and it often revealed hidden cracks in the foundation. But cracks could be sealed, and weak structures could be rebuilt. This wasn't just a battle for the bank. It was a battle for what the bank could become. Sophia took a deep breath, her determination unshaken. If someone thought they could intimidate her, they were sorely mistaken. The following morning, Carter arrived at Sophia's office with a thick folder tucked under his arm. His expression was grim but focused. He set the folder on her desk without a word and gestured for her to open it. Sophia flipped the cover and scanned the first few pages, her brow furrowing as the numbers and notes began to paint a disturbing picture. "It's worse than I thought," Carter said, breaking the silence. Grayson wasn't just dismissive and biased. He was actively manipulating loan approvals and diverting funds. Sophia looked up sharply. "Diverting funds? Explain." Carter leaned forward, pointing to a specific section in the folder. He approved a series of loans to shell companies, entities with no real business operations. The funds were then funneled into personal accounts under false pretenses. It's embezzlement, plain and simple. Sophia's jaw tightened as she flipped through the pages, each document reinforcing Carter's findings. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "From what we can tell, at least 3 years," Carter replied. "But it's possible it started even earlier." He was clever about covering his tracks. Most of these loans were small enough to avoid immediate scrutiny. Sophia closed the folder and sat back, her mind racing. This wasn't just a personnel issue anymore. Grayson's actions had left a stain on the bank's integrity. And if this information became public without a clear plan to address it, the fallout could be catastrophic. "What about the higher-ups?" Sophia asked. "Did anyone else know about this?" Carter hesitated before answering. "We haven't found evidence that anyone above Grayson was involved, but there's no guarantee they weren't turning a blind eye. It's hard to believe he pulled this off entirely on his own." Sophia nodded, her thoughts sharpening into a plan. "We need to move quickly," she said. "First, freeze any remaining accounts tied to these shell companies. Second, prepare a report for the legal team. I want them to start building a case immediately." Carter scribbled notes as she spoke, his demeanor all business. "And what about the staff?" he asked. "Do we keep this under wraps for now?" "No," Sophia said firmly. "Transparency is non-negotiable. The employees need to know what's been happening here, and they need to know that we're taking steps to fix it. Secrets are what allowed this to go on for so long. That ends now." Carter nodded, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You've got it. I'll start on this right away." As he left, Sophia leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. The magnitude of what she'd uncovered weighed heavily on her, but she refused to let it slow her down. Grayson's corruption was a betrayal not only of the bank's clients but of the hard-working employees who had trusted their leadership. Fixing this wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. Sophia reached for her phone and dialed a number she'd saved weeks ago but hadn't yet needed. Her contact at the local press. When the journalist answered, Sophia got straight to the point. "I have a story for you," she said, her voice steady. "But we'll need to meet in person." The journalist agreed, and Sophia set the time and place. If she was going to clean up this mess, she needed to control the narrative. It wasn't just about damage control. It was about accountability. As she hung up, a new wave of determination surged through her. Grayson might have left the building, but his shadow lingered. It was time to clear it for good. Later that evening, Sophia sat in a quiet corner of a downtown coffee shop, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. Across the table sat Daniel Brooks, an investigative journalist known for his sharp reporting and no-nonsense approach to exposing corruption. He had his notepad open, pen poised, and an intense look of curiosity etched on his face. "All right, Ms. James," Daniel said, leaning slightly forward. "You've got my attention. What's going on at your bank?" Sophia took a steadying breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for. "What I'm about to share is sensitive, but it needs to be addressed. The previous branch manager, Richard Grayson, was involved in a long-term scheme to approve fraudulent loans and divert funds into personal accounts. We've uncovered evidence that spans at least 3 years, possibly longer." Daniel's eyebrows shot up. "And you're willing to go public with this?" "Yes," Sophia said firmly. "The public deserves to know the truth. But I also need this story to highlight what we're doing to fix it. Transparency is key, but so is rebuilding trust." Daniel nodded, scribbling notes as she spoke. "How deep does this go? Are we talking about a systemic issue across the entire bank or something isolated to your branch?" "For now, the evidence points to Grayson acting independently within this branch," Sophia explained. "But we're conducting a full audit to ensure this behavior hasn't spread further. I won't allow the reputation of this institution or the hard work of its employees to be tarnished by one man's greed." The journalist's pen paused and he looked up at her. "And what happens if this blows up bigger than you expect? This could lead to lawsuits, regulatory scrutiny, even a hit to your client base." Sophia met his gaze without flinching. "That's a risk I'm willing to take," she said, "because the alternative is worse, letting this stay buried and allowing corruption to fester. I'm not here to preserve the old ways of doing business. I'm here to rebuild from the ground up, no matter how messy it gets." Daniel leaned back in his chair, clearly impressed. "You're taking a big gamble, Ms. James, but I respect it. When do you want to run the story?" "Give me 48 hours, Sophia replied. "I want to inform the employees and our stakeholders first. They deserve to hear it from us, not through the news." "Fair enough," Daniel said, closing his notebook. "I'll start drafting it and I'll hold the publication until you give the go-ahead." As they shook hands and parted ways, Sophia felt a sense of relief mixed with determination. The wheels were in motion, and there was no turning back now. She had chosen the harder path, but it was the only one that aligned with her vision for the bank and her values. The following morning, Sophia called an emergency all-staff meeting. The employees filed into the conference room, murmurs of concern filling the space. Even Carter, who had been briefed earlier, looked slightly uneasy as he took his seat near the front. Sophia stood at the head of the table, her expression calm but resolute. She waited until the room had quieted before she began. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she said. "I called this meeting because I believe in transparency, and I owe it to each of you to be honest about what we've discovered." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Over the past few days, we've uncovered evidence of financial misconduct within this branch. Fraudulent loans, misappropriation of funds, and unethical practices that have gone unchecked for years. This behavior is unacceptable, and I want to be clear, it will not be tolerated." The room fell silent, the air heavy with tension. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, and a few visibly stiffened. Sophia pressed on. I know this is difficult to hear, but it's important to understand that this is not a reflection of who we are or who we're going to be moving forward. We are taking immediate action to address these issues, including a full audit and a comprehensive review of all policies and procedures. A hand shot up near the back. It was Michael. Ms. James, he said, his voice steady but concerned. What does this mean for us? Are our jobs at risk because of this? Sophia's expression softened slightly. No, she said firmly. This is not about punishing the staff. This is about correcting past mistakes and ensuring we have a foundation of integrity and accountability. If anything, this is an opportunity for all of us to step up and be part of the solution. The tension in the room eased slightly, though the weight of the revelation still lingered. I want to thank each of you for your dedication, Sophia continued. This is a turning point for our branch, and I believe we can come out of this stronger, together. The employees nodded, some with cautious optimism, others with a renewed sense of purpose. As the meeting ended and the room began to empty, Carter approached Sophia, his expression thoughtful. You handled that well, he said. Better than I expected. Sophia smiled faintly. Thanks, but the hard part is just beginning, she replied. Now we have to deliver on everything I promised. Carter nodded. If anyone can pull it off, it's you. As the last employee left the room, Sophia took a deep breath. The road ahead was long, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't backing down. As the employees returned to their workstations, the energy in the bank shifted. There was an undercurrent of determination in the air, but also a hint of unease. Sophia could see it in their faces as she walked through the lobby. Some nodded at her with cautious respect, while others avoided her gaze altogether. She understood their hesitation. Change, especially when it involved confronting past mistakes, was never easy. Back in her office, Sophia began drafting an official statement for the bank's clients and stakeholders. She chose her words carefully, striking a balance between transparency and reassurance. The statement acknowledged the issues uncovered, outlined the steps being taken to address them, and reaffirmed the bank's commitment to integrity and community engagement. Every sentence carried her personal stamp, a promise that this would be a different kind of institution under her leadership. As she finished the draft, her phone buzzed with a call from Carter. We've frozen the accounts tied to the shell companies, he said without preamble. Legal is combing through the documentation now. They're confident we have enough to bring charges against Grayson. Good, Sophia replied. What about the external auditors? Have they started reviewing the other branches? They're on it, Carter confirmed. No red flags so far, but they'll need a few weeks to complete the full audit. Keep me updated, Sophia said. I don't want any surprises. After ending the call, Sophia leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of the day settle over her. She knew she was making progress, but the note she'd received earlier lingered in the back of her mind. Someone in the bank had been complicit, or at the very least resistant to the changes she was implementing, and they weren't afraid to make that known. Sophia pulled the note from her desk drawer and read it again. The words were sharp, almost rushed, as if the writer had been in a hurry or nervous. She scanned the handwriting carefully, looking for clues, but there was nothing distinct enough to identify the sender. With a sigh, she placed the note back in the drawer and locked it. Whoever was behind it would reveal themselves in time. For now, she had bigger battles to fight. Later that afternoon, Sophia's plan to inform the clients began to take shape. She scheduled a town hall meeting for the following week, inviting community leaders, local business owners, and longtime customers to attend. It would be her opportunity to address them directly, to rebuild their trust face to face. Michael stopped by her office just as she was finalizing the details. Ms. James, he said, hesitating in the doorway. Can I speak with you for a moment? Of course, Sophia said, motioning for him to sit. Michael closed the door behind him, his expression serious. I wanted to tell you something. During the meeting earlier, I overheard a few employees talking in the break room. They seemed angry. One of them mentioned that Grayson always looked out for his people, and that things were better before you took over. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. Did they say anything specific or mention who his people are? Michael shook his head. No names, but it was clear they weren't happy about the changes. I don't know if it's connected to that note you mentioned, but I thought you should know. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you bringing this to me. Michael stood, his expression resolute. For what it's worth, most of us believe in what you're doing. Don't let a few bad apples stop you. Sophia smiled faintly as he left, his words bolstering her resolve. She had anticipated resistance, but now it was clear that some of it was rooted in loyalty to Grayson, and possibly complicity in his schemes. If those individuals thought they could intimidate her into stepping back, they were sorely mistaken. As the day wound down, Sophia looked out the window of her office, watching the city lights flicker to life. The challenges ahead were daunting, but she reminded herself why she had taken this on. It wasn't just about cleaning up a corrupt system. It was about proving that integrity and success could coexist. And she was just getting started. The day of the town hall meeting arrived, and the bank's largest conference room was transformed into a space that reflected the gravity of the moment. Rows of chairs faced a podium, with a backdrop displaying the bank's logo and a banner that read, Integrity, Growth, Community. Sophia stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived, local business owners, community leaders, and longtime clients. Some approached her with cautious smiles, others with skepticism, but all of them came, curious about what the new leadership had to say. Michael and a few other employees worked behind the scenes, helping organize the event. Carter, standing by the coffee station, occasionally glanced her way, giving her a nod of reassurance. As the room filled, Sophia took a deep breath, readying herself for what was about to unfold. When it was time, she stepped to the podium, the room falling silent as all eyes turned to her. She looked out at the crowd, her expression calm but purposeful. Good evening, she began, her voice steady. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know that over the past few weeks there have been many questions about the changes happening at this branch, and about my leadership. I asked you here today because I believe in addressing these questions openly and honestly. She paused, letting her words sink in. When I acquired this bank, I envisioned a place that not only served its clients but uplifted its community. What I discovered, however, was a system plagued by practices that betrayed that vision. Over the past few weeks, we have uncovered financial misconduct and systemic issues that have harmed both clients and employees. Tonight, I want to share what we are doing to make things right. The room remained silent, tension thick in the air. Sophia took a moment before continuing. First, we have terminated individuals responsible for unethical behavior, and we are cooperating with legal authorities to hold them accountable. Second, we are implementing new safeguards to ensure transparency and fairness in all operations. And finally, we are launching a community initiative to empower local entrepreneurs through workshops, mentorship, and accessible financial resources. A hand went up near the middle of the room. It was a woman in her 50s, a long-time client. Ms. James, she said, her tone skeptical. How can we trust that these changes will stick? We've heard promises like this before. Sophia nodded, acknowledging the question. That's fair, she replied. Trust isn't something I can ask for. It's something I have to earn. And the only way to earn it is through action. That's why I'm inviting every one of you to hold us accountable. I'll be hosting monthly progress updates, and you'll see firsthand what we're doing to uphold our commitments. The woman nodded, her expression softening slightly. Another hand shot up, a young man who ran a small cafe nearby. What about people like me? He asked. I've applied for loans here before and got turned down every time. What's going to be different now? Sophia met his gaze, her tone firm but empathetic. What's different is that we're changing how we evaluate applications. We're looking at potential and viability, not just rigid formulas. I can't promise every application will be approved, but I can promise you this. You will always get a fair shot." The young man nodded, his face lighting up with a glimmer of hope. Around the room, murmurs of approval began to ripple through the crowd. Sophia pressed on, seizing the momentum. This bank belongs to the community, and it's time it reflected the values and diversity of the people it serves. Together we can build something better, something we can all be proud of. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. Not everyone clapped, but the energy in the room had shifted. The skeptics hadn't all been won over, but they were listening, and that was a start. As the crowd dispersed, many attendees approached Sophia to shake her hand, share their thoughts, or offer support. Michael and Carter lingered nearby, quietly observing the positive responses. Carter eventually stepped forward, his expression one of cautious optimism. "You did well," he said simply. "Thanks," Sophia replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "But this is just the first step." He nodded. "The community is starting to believe in you. Now we just have to make sure the rest of the bank catches up." Sophia's smile widened slightly. "Oh, they'll catch up," she said, "one way or another." As the last guests left and the room emptied, Sophia took a moment to herself, standing alone by the podium. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but tonight had proven one thing. The tide was beginning to turn, and she was ready to see it through. The following morning, Sophia returned to the bank with a renewed sense of purpose. The energy from the town hall lingered in her mind, a mixture of cautious optimism and determination to deliver on the promises she had made. As she walked through the lobby, employees greeted her with polite nods, and a few even offered hesitant smiles. The shift in morale was subtle, but it was there, and it fueled her confidence. Carter met her in the hallway, holding a tablet loaded with the latest updates. "Morning," he said, falling into step beside her. "The feedback from the town hall is coming in. Mostly positive. Clients seem to appreciate the transparency, and a few have already reached out to express interest in the mentorship program." "That's good to hear," Sophia said. "What about the internal audit? Any new developments?" Carter's expression grew more serious. Legal found additional discrepancies in Grayson's dealings. It looks like he wasn't entirely alone. A few mid-level managers were complicit in approving those fraudulent loans. Sophia frowned, her pace slowing slightly. "Do we have names?" "Not yet, but we're close," Carter replied. "The auditors are following the paper trail, and it's only a matter of time before everything is laid bare." Sophia stopped in front of her office and turned to face him. "As soon as we have confirmation, I want those individuals removed from their positions. Quietly, if possible, but swiftly. We can't afford to let this drag out." Carter nodded. "Understood." Sophia entered her office and closed the door, her mind already turning over the next steps. She sat at her desk, pulled up her email, and found several messages from community leaders who had attended the town hall. Many expressed cautious optimism about the changes, while others raised concerns about how the bank would ensure fairness moving forward. One email, however, stood out. It was from an anonymous sender with the subject line, "You're digging too deep." Sophia opened the email, her eyes scanning the short, blunt message. "This is bigger than you think. Stop before it's too late." Her stomach tightened, but she refused to let the unease settle. She had expected resistance, even hostility, but this was different. This felt like a warning, or perhaps a threat. She forwarded the email to Carter with a simple note. "Add this to the investigation." Taking a deep breath, Sophia turned her attention back to the mentorship program proposal. She couldn't allow distractions to derail her progress. The program was set to launch in 2 weeks, and the response from the community would be critical in shaping the bank's new reputation. Later that afternoon, Michael stopped by her office with an update on his financial literacy initiative. He entered with a stack of papers, his enthusiasm barely contained. "Ms. James," he began, setting the papers on her desk. "I've got the first draft of the curriculum for the high school workshops. Take a look." Sophia flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the outlines and lesson plans. The material was thorough, engaging, and practical, a clear reflection of Michael's dedication. She smiled as she closed the folder. "This is excellent work, Michael. You've put a lot of thought into this." Michael beamed, his confidence growing. "Thank you. I really believe this can make a difference." "It will," Sophia said. "Let's schedule a meeting with the local school district to finalize the details. I want this program up and running as soon as possible." As Michael left, Sophia allowed herself a moment to savor the small victory. Despite the challenges, progress was being made. The community was beginning to see the bank not just as a financial institution, but as a partner invested in their success. But the anonymous email lingered in her thoughts, a quiet reminder that not everyone welcomed change. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her gaze falling on the cityscape outside her window. Whatever forces were working against her, she knew one thing: she wasn't stopping. Not now. Not ever. A week later, the tension within the bank reached a boiling point. The internal audit had uncovered the names of the mid-level managers who had aided Grayson in his schemes. Carter briefed Sophia in her office, his tone laced with urgency. "We've identified 3 individuals," he said, handing her a detailed report. "They were complicit in approving fraudulent loans and received kickbacks. The evidence is solid, and legal recommends immediate termination." Sophia reviewed the report carefully, her jaw tightening with each page. The names weren't surprising. They were among the employees Michael had overheard complaining in the break room. They had been vocal in their resistance to her leadership, but now their motivations were clear. "I'll handle this personally," Sophia said. "Schedule individual meetings with each of them for tomorrow morning. Security will escort them out afterward." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're sure you want to do this directly? It might get ugly." "I'm sure," Sophia replied. "They need to hear it from me. This isn't just about firing them. It's about sending a message to everyone else." The next day, the meetings went exactly as Sophia expected. Each of the 3 managers reacted with a mix of denial, anger, and desperation. One tried to plead ignorance, another blamed Grayson entirely, and the third lashed out, accusing Sophia of targeting them unfairly. "I'm not here to argue," Sophia said calmly to the last one. "The evidence speaks for itself. Your actions not only hurt this bank, but the clients and communities we serve. This is the consequence of your choices." By the time the final manager was escorted out, word had spread through the branch. Employees whispered among themselves, but the overall mood was one of relief. For the first time, they saw that the new leadership wasn't just talk. Sophia was taking real action to clean up the mess left behind. As the day wound down, Carter stopped by her office. "You've made your point," he said. "I think people are starting to get the message." "Good," Sophia replied. "But this isn't just about punishment. We need to rebuild trust from the ground up. That's the real challenge." Carter nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "And you're meeting it head-on." Sophia gave him a faint smile as he left. She knew there was still much to do, but the weight of the day felt lighter. Progress was being made, slowly, steadily, and unmistakably. 2 weeks later, the mentorship program officially launched. The bank's largest conference room was filled with young entrepreneurs, high school students, and community leaders, all eager to participate in the workshops. Sophia stood at the front of the room, flanked by Michael and a few other employees who had volunteered to lead sessions. As she addressed the crowd, Sophia felt a surge of pride. "This program represents the future of our bank," she said. "It's about more than loans and accounts. It's about building relationships and empowering the people who make our community thrive." The audience responded with applause, their enthusiasm palpable. Michael took over, diving into the first workshop with a confidence that reflected the transformation Sophia had seen in him over the past few weeks. Watching him speak, she felt a sense of validation. The changes she had fought for weren't just theoretical. They were taking root in the lives of real people. Later that evening, as Sophia walked through the quiet halls of the bank, she reflected on how far they had come. The threats, the resistance, and the challenges had been daunting, but she had stood her ground. The institution she had inherited, a place marked by corruption and complacency, was transforming into a beacon of integrity and opportunity. Sophia returned to her office and sat at her desk, her gaze falling on the city lights outside her window. The battle wasn't over. There would always be challenges to face. But the foundation had been laid. The community was beginning to trust the bank again, and the employees were starting to believe in her vision. For the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She had taken on a system that tried to dismiss and undermine her, and she had proven not just to them, but to herself, that change was possible. As she turned off her desk lamp and gathered her things to leave, one thought echoed in her mind. This was just the beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. See you in the next one.